Hey guys, today it is time to get flocked up. Yeah, we are finally finishing our Castle Frankenstein miniature, so that way we can mount it to the backing board of our lightning detector. And our Frankenstein laboratory tower right here is ready to get hit by lightning, hopefully multiple times, because we are getting into our stormy season. So luckily we are wrapping up this project just in time to put it to good use. So in order to catch everybody up, and I see like a lot of you guys were here beforehand, we were going back and forth with a few of you guys, and today's motto is indeed our Bob Ross motto, which we've been using throughout this stream, which is, there are no mistakes. There's only happy little accidents. And boy, have I put that to the test, like repeatedly this entire time. And it happens to be true. We botched a few things that ended up looking really good. So mistakes are good. And so we have David Beck and Kurt Benning. I think they were like the first ones in, commenting back and forth. Hopefully everybody's eaten, because we are gonna like get through this castle. And Don Stricker is here. Good afternoon to you too. Mahai Baiku. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too much. Hi back at you. Frozen Mustache is back. He says, I am here, clapping. And then Todd Cesario. That is awesome, he says. Yes. I've been like waiting for this stream. Like I kept thinking about, I can't wait for the stream when we start like flocking things and finishing this. Because if you guys recall, this was actually two pieces. We made the cliffs here in one session, or quite a few sessions, but in one piece. And then we made the castle as a kind of a different set of sessions. And then I was, supposed to unite them somehow. And look, it looks pretty decent, people. It looks pretty decent. I am not gonna lie. The objective was to give the cliffs, this side right here, to give the cliffs a slightly different color than the rest of the castle, so the castle ties in with the little road that leads to the castle, but I didn't want it to be too different, so relatable enough, but different enough that you can see it's castle and then cliffs. And I still think I have the real Young Frankenstein castle loaded up here. Let me take a look at it. And this is kind of was the basis of our creation. And this is from the actual Young Frankenstein painting that they used as the backdrop for that one scene. And interestingly enough, it's the same castle that was used in the 1930s version of Frankenstein as well. So they didn't really alter the castle. So whether you're a fan of the original or Young Frankenstein, I love Young Frankenstein, the castle's kind of the same. So that's basically what inspired this whole thing. And we made a few artistic, modifications, and also a couple dimension style modifications, because the objective was for this thing to lay pretty flat. Like I didn't want a model that came up and was way too high or had a lot of depth, because we are going to be attaching this model to our lightning detector, which is going to go inside our faux cathedral window. So it'll be nice to get a window in the shop here. I work in a windowless garage, so it'd be nice to have something to look out upon. And boy, what a scene to look out upon. And then imagine the cathedral window. So some of you that are kind of joining for the first time will see this thing like riddled with holes. It's like, what's going on there? And so that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to start with Castle Frankenstein and make sure that we get that done. But the idea with the backing panel is that I went ahead and wired up a whole bunch of LEDs, which isn't here. I took them off just so we can slide this around and be rough with it and not worry about those precious connections. Like Jel said before, I was wiring up LEDs and putting them on. He's like, whoa, don't be too rough with them. Those connections pop off really easily. And boy, was he right. They just kept popping off the entire stream. And I was like, curses. He was right. I had to admit it. And then Frank Starr is back. Hi, Gearhead. Good to see you. Keep those live videos coming. Yes. Awesome. Glad you like it. And Carrie Smith says hello. Don Stricker. And I like to move into it. Heck, get in line, or maybe you can have one wing and then I can have the other. Like there's plenty of wings here. I think we can stuff all of us on chat in here. We each kind of take a wing. So the idea with mounting all of the LEDs here is that once I flip this around, these two holes here will allow us to add ambient lighting inside the castle. So flame flickering effects. This larger hole is for 2 LEDs. That way we can also add a blue kind of flickering LED to signify like a Jacob's ladder or a Tesla coil going off in the laboratory. So those are perfectly positioned to be on Frankenstein's laboratory or behind his laboratory. Then we have this lightning bolt, which I made with a Dremel. So it's completely all the way through, which you kind of can, I'm like rubbing my hand. Ooh, you can kind of see up here. And the idea is that the LEDs, we can change the color of the LED depending on how bad the lightning storm is. But all of this, the LEDs are just going to run down and hit our Castle Frankenstein in the roof. And so, you know, hopefully that'll be enough of a jolt to wake his creature. So all of this, the lighting effects, the castle, it's going to be tied to a real deal lightning detector. So when it detects lightning outside, it can detect up to 40 kilometers. It'll start, we can program different lighting schemes depending on how far the lightning is, or keep it simple. If there's lightning, something happens. And so flashing lights, the lightning can come down. If the lightning detector is having some kind of error, we can use a different lighting scenario for that as well. So before finally putting this into the window, it's looking good as is. But I think we can take this to the next level. So I have a whole bunch of goodies over here that I'm going to show you guys. And we're going to decide kind of together how we're going to decorate it. You know, if we want a fall theme, a winter theme, a spring theme. So let's see what we got. And Charles Haney is here. I'm so glad my son told me you were on. It gave me an excuse not to mow the grass. I know I also have yard work to do. I put rocks outside underneath the deck, and I didn't have weeds for the longest time, and then they started popping up, and I was like giving them the side eye today, but I didn't get around to it. Instead, I was painting this. So that's a good excuse. And by you watching me, you're kind of doing it, and you're going to be giving your opinions, so you're helping out. You're excused. And then Dave Beck is saying, I'm okay with sharing the castle as long as I get a lot of lab time. Oh, we're going to have to schedule it. Me and Dave will be like duking it out. But I'm sure that tower looks pretty tall. Maybe there's like different, like a condos, you know, we can have different levels and each of us can get a level. And I think that'll be enough for everybody on chat to kind of have a laboratory room. And then he says, especially if there is some Guns N' Roses playing. Oh yeah, people, I wore this because we're going to rock this out. So enough chat. Let's see what we got going on here. And here's my castle. And you can see, I think that the cliffs turned out pretty well. You can see that they're, you know, pretty different than what the castle is, but not too different. Not too different, you know, mostly different. And let me give you guys a better view. Oh, that might be too close. Too close. But if you recall from last time, especially looking along this cliff line right here where it meets the castle, one of the things that I liked from the Castle Frankenstein is that it looks like the castle is like coming up on out of the mountain. It's not like castle on top of mountain. They're kind of one piece. And so I tried to somewhat imitate that, and I think we can finish the effect by using some gravel. So looking at... there we go. Looking at this, don't hinder me, technology. We got a lot of work to do today. So looking at this cliff, you can see where I've put in additional rocks that meet right up with the castle. And right here, as you follow this little bridge, one of the problems I had is that the bridge didn't align with this road. So that's a mistake. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to channel Bob Ross. I'm going to channel him. And it's not a mistake. It's a happy little surprise. So what I did was crumble the rest of the railing. So it kind of looks like the end of the bridge is falling over and then made kind of a rock slide that then meets up with the bridge right here. As you recall, all this was like free floating, you know. So, you know, I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull this off. And a couple more rocks here. So the castle is kind of growing out of the cliffs. And I'm going to show you the atrocity going on in the back here to get this done. So of course our castle was made out of foam core board from the dollar store. Thank you. So this entire castle costs less than $1 because I have a ton of foam core board left over. You can see all the roof frames were made of popsicle sticks and toothpicks. And then we cut out some paper to create all of the shingles. And you can see where I've Jenga'd a couple rocks formations right here in order to hold everything together. And this was done with our hot glue gun. You can see that the cliff, it was originally 4 layers of this stuff. And as I carved it back, because again, I don't want a window that sticks out of the wall too much because I'm gonna hit my head on it. So this at most is about 2.5 inches, and then you add the frame, you're looking between 4 and 5 inches. So it's a chunky little thing, but it's not horrific, you know? And then Robert McSween said, hey, Rachel, I made it. And you made it just in time. Brian Palmer is also here. Okay, so we got a lot of our gang going on, and we always get some new ones. I think the only one we're missing right now is Gel. I haven't seen him chime in. So Robert McSween saying, looks great, definitely have skills. All right, either that or I'm rocking the Bob Ross principle. We made a lot of mistakes, so many in fact that they canceled each other out and morphed into greatness. So only a couple more things to do here if you look at the roofs. Now, some of you saw the picture I posted with the roof. I made them all black like this with some bronzing and, you know, with some weathering effects. And the black looked good. It didn't wow me, but I just couldn't decide what color that I should make these roofs. I could have made them a little bit bluish. Blue goes with copper really well. I didn't know if that would clash until last night. I was putting away the dishes and Van Helsing was on, the one with Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. So I was like, oh, this is neat. And lo and behold, it was calling to me. A castle scene comes up, and the castles and all the buildings in that movie had red roofs, kind of red, dilapidated. They looked so good. And I was like, oh, I am borrowing that idea. Heck yeah. So I started to make mine red. And what I really like about it is that it really pops against the stone, whereas the black pops too, but it's kind of like expected. You know, and the red adds a little pop. So this is as far as I got with the red. Together, I think we'll attack this first just to get it out of the way. Second, I'd like to work on a little bit of this cliffs. And for that, I went out and got me some gravel. Unfortunately, I did not have this stuff lying around in the yard. Another really great thing to use for roofs and things is mulch and chop it up into like little bits. It makes great, realistic looking flock. So I have this slate colored because I thought it would be kind of a good transition from the cliffs to Castle Frankenstein, and we can use some of this gravel to kind of fill in the gaps and also give us a better transition from cliffs to castle. So Robert McSween is saying, great movie. Yes, I actually like that movie a lot. It was a lot of fun to watch, especially when it came out. So let's start with the first thing, but I'm also going to start giving you guys some options so you can start thinking about it. You know, some of you need to sit and think a bit. So here we have some of this moss, and this is great for roofs and vining, things like that. So I'm pretty sure there's a way we can use that even in our cliffs. And what else do we have here? I'm just like introing you guys to all the goodies. Same thing. I love this green moss right here. And the nice thing is that you can make like little bushes out of it too. So I'm sure we can find some good use for that. Maybe tuck them in the like little cracks of all of our rocks. So there's that. Let me put all these away. Now, we also have different color flock. You know, a very bright limey green one. I'm not too much of a fan of that one. I kind of like this one right here. It's got more brown, perhaps a more natural tone. Then we have like a fall color, kind of like dead grass going on there. And then kind of a darker, maybe wintry grass. And of course we can mix them to get different colors, you know, that we can, you know, patch and put, especially on this road here. We can definitely have some mossy spots on our castle as well. Maybe around the window where water has pooled around the corners, we can add some moss and some vining with some of this other stuff. So the other bag that I got, and I instantly threw this to the side. I'm like, yeah, we don't need no snow, you know? But when I base coated these all white, I'm like, that looks pretty good. And it was kind of like you get a transition, but it's nice to have something breaking up the transition, little snow-covered tops. You guys decide. I'm going to leave this out, and you guys decide if you want to do more winter, if you want to do more just greens and, you know, stick with the green palette. So start thinking on that. And then Rick Franz is here. Welcome back. And Robert saying, how would brushing on Mod Podge then sprinkle with the gravel? The Mod Podge would dry clear and reveal the gravel. Yeah, so that's kind of like the first idea that I had. I have the hot glue gun, but in my experience, throwing flock on top of the gob of glue, I can never get it to look natural. I use the hot glue for bigger items like bushes and things like that. But I do like the Mod Podge where you can take a brush and just kind of speckle where you want that, and it's pretty precise. So that's kind of the first route that I'm going to take, and I have it ready for me right here. It's our Mod Podge. So this one's gloss. I prefer matte, but I have so much of this gloss that I kind of want to get through it before I buy more matte. Number 1 is here. Bobcat. Where are your Bobcat at? It's somewhere. It's somewhere. I'm going to get a little bobcat and put it. And he's referring to Ohio University. The mascot is a bobcat, which is where I went. And so number 1 has been asking me to hide a bobcat somewhere. So we'll see. But where the bobcat will not go is up here on this hill, because I'm reserving that spot for a horse, which in later phases, this project is going to make reappearances, cameos as we take this further and add more weather detecting elements to it. But one thing I definitely want to add is a sound module. That way, every time lightning strikes, we have our FB, you know, our Frau Blücher horse, a neigh, and we can stick a LED up its head or something and have his eyes glow red as it neighs, and this whole thing is getting hit by lightning. So that's reserved, you know, so no bobcat up here. All right, let me prep for our roofing. Let me just toss this in a place where I can find it. It's the worst where I put it down and then the stream is over and I forget about it and I'm like, oh, I forgot to add this, that, or the other. So let me bust out my dollar store crafts here. Listen, we have done a lot with dollar store crafts, so you can't knock it. All right, so I think the color I want to go with is this one right here. It's just a basic gray. It's called neutral gray. So I'm going to dry brush this black portion of the roof all because that lighter color gives the red something to grab onto and it looks a little more natural. So let me give you guys a better view. Let me move all this stuff, and maybe I'll put this guy over here out of the way. And so let's get with the dry brushing, and this process shouldn't take too long. Famous last words. And then Robert McSween is saying, I cannot wait to see the finished product. It's going to be sweet. Oh, I certainly hope so. I am super excited as well. So let me see what kind of brush is up to the task. Let's see, I'm grabbing a couple from my, magic beaker, science beaker brush holder here. And I'm just going to bust out a couple that I think we'll need for the project so I don't have to keep going back and forth or anything like that. So I think that's good. We can always go back if we need to. Kurt Benning is can't wait to see this get done. You and me both. For two reasons. One, I definitely, just want to see it. I think it's pretty cool. Second reason is this has been a bit of a long project, but I'm okay with it because originally this was just going to hook up to an LCD screen and be a pocket lightning detector. Now, although this is a little less convenient, you certainly don't want to run around with this. It's way cooler. So all I'm going to do is just take the brush and lightly brush this gray down each of the shingles, and you can see that it catches on all the raised areas. And let me bring you guys in. There we go. Whoa, a little heavy there. But this starts to add a little bit more depth, so that way you don't just see like a big black hole of, shingles. Also, you see a lot more of the dilapidation. So it just kind of like loves to grab all of those detriments that you have put in. And we pretty much worked really hard at cutting all these out. We did this one together and it turned out pretty well. The cone, which I thought would be the easiest. I'm like, oh, I'll do that one, for you guys. I figured I'd cheat, and like look all good and stuff. That one was actually, I thought, more challenging because you have to get the curvature just right or else it looks kind of strange. So there I thought I was setting myself up, to look all good. But no, it was actually pretty challenging. I'm going to flip this guy so that's looking pretty good there. I'll let that focus. And then I'm going to just kind of stand him up and work on these shingles right here. And I'm just using a paper towel nearby to just kind of wipe the excess off. So the natural bristles on the brush just kind of adds those streaks and those striations of just wear. So it's kind of a quick, non-fancy way of getting some dilapidation effects. And then I think this one will look much better because with the rest of the roof, I was experimenting. I was adding bronze. I was adding, all kinds of things. With this one, I know exactly the effect I want, so I'm going for it. And remember when we were making the roof shingles, we were alternating raising and creasing different shingles up and down. And that's because when you start this process, all the raised shingles will naturally get that lighter color, whereas the shingles that we had bent down kind of fade into the darkness. And so it does look like missing shingles and things like that. So it does help give it kind of that look of things not going so right, especially Frankenstein's tower, since it's the one that's going to get hit by lightning all the time. And then Robert McSween is saying, at the right angles, the towers look like dragon heads. I suppose, because you could do like a cool red dragon a la Harry Potter. I don't recall, having dragon, but if you ever go to the Harry Potter land at Universal, the first thought I had when reading Robert's comment was that dragon that sits atop a tower and he sits there breathing fire down on everyone, not actually, on everyone, but it's real fire and he's sitting really, really high. And he was not a red dragon, but I can picture a cool dragon kind of sitting on top of something like this. But we're pretty much staying to our theme of Frankenstein. But we could do kind of like a fantasy build. I wonder what that would look like. People, start thinking. Like more like wizards and dragons, of course. Like we have to have the dragons for any type of fantasy build. It can be a diorama. It can be like a larger scale miniature build. Kind of trying to turn this in a way you guys can see. And Robert McSween's already saying, future castle build. So we're going to build another castle. So we've done Frankenstein's castle. I'm trying to think of we can always build a castle that is invented by us. It doesn't have to be in any monster movie. But that being said, who else has a really cool castle? If it's not Frankenstein. All right. So our dilapidation is done. And you can see, if you want to just stop there, this already looks good. This already looks pretty dilapidated with just a couple strokes going down all the same, all the same direction. That looks pretty good, but not for us. We're going to take this up a notch. And so the next thing I'm going to do is, I didn't get any water for my brushes. I will go do that shortly, but let me just show you guys. The next thing I'm going to do is, and there goes my paints, is use this bronze color. So this is pretty cool because the bronze ties in with a lot of this woodwork right here. It ties into the browns that we've been using. And also it makes it look like the shingles were at one time bronze. And then and painted red. And then the red starts to kind of wear off and then you get the bronze underneath. So I'm going to get some water because that's the only thing that I didn't prepare for, you know, cleaning brushes and stuff. And I will be right back. So I got 2 cups. And I have this cup. Ooh, this has water in it. All right, I'm gonna delay that a little bit. I'm just gonna put that on hold. Eventually I will have to get some more water. And Kurt Benny is still going for that car project. And I commend you. Keep going for it. Keep going for it. We'll have to do a car project. I just need a bigger space. I need a bigger space to do a really cool one. If we're gonna do a car project, it's gotta be like awesome, super awesome. All right, what did I say? Bronze, right? And then Dave Beck says, good story, but it needs more dragons. Indeed, everything needs more dragons. I mean, what doesn't in life, right? Boring business meeting, add dragons, you know? Have to sit through a speech, add dragons. Problem solved. So now I'm taking bronze, that bronze color, and I'm kind of doing the same thing. Now this metallics, you don't have to clean off your brush as much because their pigmentation, I guess the amount of pigmentation seems to be less than you have with other colors. So with the bronze, all I'm doing is trying to get just the bottoms now of each shingle. And with these kind of like big ones, it's a little easier with the little, ooh, that's a lot. Here I am telling you guys, oh, you don't have to wipe it off. It's, you know, you barely get any. So I'm even standing up for this. Hit these shingles. Now the ones I'm painting now, if you look closely, they're incorrect. Water would never run down these because I have them layered completely wrong. And so how would Bob Ross explain this one away? I'm going to explain it that it's the reason why Castle Frankenstein is all dilapidated. It's just taken on way too much water damage because Rachel, the roof installer, has completely jacked up his roof. So clearly I am not properly licensed and he didn't do his homework before hiring me. So that's his problem. I completely jacked up his laboratory. And let me see if I can bring you guys in closer. And Robert McSween says that the paints, the metallic paints, also seem to be thinner. They do seem to be thinner. So I think like you can go a little more heavy-handed with them without worrying as much. So here I am kind of hitting the little tips of all of our shingles here. And this is pretty easy. I'm just kind of like poking around. And the color just takes pretty well. So in no time, we're gonna have some cool looking shingles like that. And I'm just gonna repeat what I just did on this side. This is so awkward, very awkward. And I'm gonna try and just hit up the bottom and then move to the top. The camera always wants to focus on the thing closest to it, which is the actual paintbrush rather than the piece. So I'm going to try and paint kind of sideways. It's a little awkward, but doable. So that way the paintbrush isn't the highest thing or the thing closest to the camera. And soon we will have a red roof, just like the ones right next to it. And I think we can also add some damage effects once we're done with either flock or I still have coffee grounds. Now, Wrench Army members, you guys remember the coffee grounds. I love using coffee grounds to create burned effects. So it's kind of nice. It gives you kind of that crunch look when something gets burned. So not only can you create a burn effect with paint, and use a flat look, but that's still very deceiving, you can also add in those coffee grounds to give you a more 3D texturized effect as well. And Ernie A is saying slate shingles. And yep, that's pretty much what we got going on here. And Robert McSween, you didn't pull a permit. Yep. And oops, that's what happens when you don't pull a permit. Things kind of, the builders get away with stuff. And I certainly did on this project. Poor Frankenstein was kind of like left with a bad, shoddy workmanship on his roof. All right, this is not awkward or anything. I wonder if I could turn it this way and you guys can still see. Something like that, yeah. It's still a little awkward, but slightly less awkward, if that makes any sense. So, if you don't like the red and you don't want to do a color, the bronze and the black already look really, really good. The camera kind of overshines it a little bit, and then when it dries, it blends in a lot more. I'm like looking at it now, it seems to, at least on the camera, pop a little more than it pops in real life. So it's just a very subtle bronzing. And then I'm just going down this roof. Oh, whoa, that's a over bronze. I over bronzed it right there. And our shingles that are lifted are the ones that are kind of catching this bronze look. Just the tips of the shingles. And because we're dry brushing, it kind of works like a gradient. You know, the darker the shingle towards the back of the shingle and the very tip of the shingle gets the bronze on it. And then the red, we're going to try and tuck it in those dark areas. So all I have to do now is just this portion right here. And then we will add the reddening. It'll be the reddening. Oh no, I did it. Never mind. I was thinking I didn't, but I did. So that's looking pretty good. And yeah, just that by itself, I think looks pretty good. It's just a little bit of shimmer, which to the natural eye just helps to make it pop a little bit and gives it even more wear. Metallics on the camera tend to pick up a little too shiny, you know, a little too bling. So it may look bling, but it's not. It actually looks pretty cool. So I'm going to leave some of that bronze there, and we're going to move on to the red. And which red did I use? Or did it fall on the floor? Nope. This is cadmium red. So far we've used black as a base coat, and for that, because the roofs were already on a painted castle, I went in with a little brush and I just, tried to get in all the little nooks and crannies with that black base coat. And then I went gray, just a regular gray, the bronze metallic, and now we're adding this red, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to put him here. And this I want to dry brush rather lightly. We'll add a couple spots of interest, only because this red, if it's too strong, it ends up looking like blood, like you got bloody roofs, which for Van Helsing I can see that would totally work. But for Frankenstein, it's like, oh, that's the wrong movie. So let's see how much further. Whoa, that's pretty far in. And so the idea is just to kind of bring, with a dry brush, bring the red down into the bronze and mix the two. Let them just kind of get to know each other, can rate each other. Saying, I'm having a good time, how about you? And you still have some of that black underneath. So you start getting some dimensionality. Going a little heavy with the red, because one of the things I learned, first I said, don't go heavy, and then you see me going heavy. It does dry a little bit darker. So it's nice to have a couple areas of much more red, and then areas of not as much red. Did you guys catch that explanation? Wasn't it amazing? You want areas of some red, you know, a lot of red and then not so much red. That's a high-tech explanation right there. All right. Mostly I'm just stabbing it on there. And here I'm going to try and get underneath the shingle and pull that red out and get underneath the shingle here. Because I want to try and leave those shingle tips to be bronze. And I only drag a tiny bit of red onto those bronzed areas, just so the bronze is not so stark. And the bronze kind of shines through the red. There we go. And so we can almost add like coffee grounds to this area here where the roof is like blown off. But I'm going to do the toughest part of the roof, which is this inside corner. And I might have to like back you guys out. This corner right here because it touches. And of course it's wanting to focus on that little, that little top right there. And maybe if I put my finger here like, hello, focus over here. It's very into that tower. Thinks it's the coolest thing. Oh, there we go. I can do something like that. This is not, whoa, it's not awkward or anything. Paint the tops of these shingles. Yeah, so this is courtesy of Van Helsing on TV. Sometimes when, whoop, that's a bit much. When you get lost, sometimes a sign will come. And so when I saw that castle with the red roofs, I'm like, oh, this must be it. I gotta make my roofs red as well. And here I'm just sticking the red up in there. And having this castle completely in the way is not hard or anything. The last time we did our roofs, we didn't have this whole cliff situation. And now I do. But I was like, oh, I'll leave one roof undone to kind of show you guys how I did it. And that's always the challenge. You know, sometimes you get to building and moving the project forward, and then you have to decide, okay, well, what do I want left undone to show you guys so that way we don't stream and then you guys are looking at a completely different project that's miles ahead. Plus, I like to stop at points where you guys can give some cool input and we can, you know, we still have time and we can like change directions, which is how this whole thing came about. Because I think it was David who mentioned the tininess of the screen. I was going to use this LCD screen and it was tiny, I do admit. I kind of didn't read the dimensions of it online before I bought it, and well, that's what you get when you don't do that. And so I got it and I'm like, oh, I can work with this. It's not so bad, you know, I can do something here. So I think we got the tough part down, which is that part right next to the rest. And now this part is rather easy, which is our exposed area right here. And then the reddening will be complete and we're gonna move to the gravel. And I haven't seen any one of you guys chime in yet as to whether we're going to do any type of snow covered anything, or if we're going to bag snow completely and just stick with the different colored green flocks. Obviously we have vines, all that kind of stuff, some dead stuff that we can also put here. Let me know if we want to do any coffee grounds on the roof to show burn marks. We can also paint that too. We can come back to the roof and do that. And I'm just sticking my brush all up in them cracks. All up in them cracks. So it looks like in the cracks is where the shingle is most protected. And so it gives the impression that these things were once, well, they were once bronze and then painted red, because the bronze, which is the tips of the shingles, is what's more exposed. So the red has kind of rubbed off or worn away to expose, enough explosions here, to expose our metal shingles. Getting all up in there. And Chevy Tom has joined us. Hey, Chevy Tom. He's saying that she is super talented. Why, thank you. Hopefully you were here for our Bob Ross special. Because I found by following the Bob Ross motto, and you just kind of let go of caring whether or not you make mistakes, your projects actually end up turning out better. This has turned out so much better by me not being so picky, trying to get like all the brush strokes right, especially with our Bob Ross painting. That was the first time I did that. I was scared. I don't know about you guys. I tried to like play it all tough. Like, I got this, guys. You know, no, I was chicken. I'm not gonna lie. I was being totally chicken. I was definitely scared. And I went with it. And sometimes there were moments in that, I am not going to lie, it did not look like it was going to turn out too well. And I was like, oh man, am I going to have to scrap this thing? But no, you just give yourself permission to make mistakes and start making a bunch of them. And before you know it, all of those mistakes come together to create something pretty cool. And Robert McSween saying, I heard a puppy bark. Yes, you're probably going to hear them. I have no puppy sitter anymore. And so now we've gone back to our night streams, which is, I know, super helpful to a lot of you guys. You know, I like night streams because you can just kind of keep going as long as you want. Although I try and, you know, keep them in shorter chunks so that way it's manageable, you know. And we can get some cool things done in a small amount of time. And Robert McSween saying the red works. So back to the dogs. You will hear them going off from time to time. Sometimes I'll leave the door open here so I can keep an eye on her. After all, she is only 5 months. So the audience is split on whether or not she's being good or bad sometimes. Sometimes we'll hear some awkward noises and I'm like, uh-oh, and I take a poll. Who here thinks she's being good and who here thinks she's being bad and maybe chewing something she shouldn't be chewing on? So we got the roofs totally done and they have just a little bit of enough of a red pop. So the next thing we're going to tackle is while that dries, because I think one of you already mentioned snow. And then, let's see, I'm just going back in the chat. Robert is saying snow would look cool. Dave Beck, flock it. Snow goes against my storm chaser spidey senses. So we have flock, we have snow. And then Dave Beck saying Ripley agrees with me as well. She probably does. And then, of course, Robert is saying the red works. So while that dries and I get more of you guys chiming in, why don't we figure out how we're going to add some gravel here? So I'm just going to put this down like this. And let's see what we got going on here. Well, that's not bad. I think you guys can mostly see what's going on there. And that's a close-up of our red roofs. So as that red dries, it's going to get darker, you know, a lot like what you see here. So it blends in a little more. I remember the first time I did it, I was like, oh no, I screwed it all up. I'm going to have to admit to you all that I totally screwed up our project. Oh, and I forgot to say, I also have 2 of each of these colored trees. Now, in my opinion, they're a little unicolored, meaning just one color. It's not really realistic. So maybe we can flock some of the other colored flock some of the other color flock on top of this, or paint them just to give them a little bit more dimension. But I'm sure we'll find a place for those. I have a couple mistakes I want to hide and turn them into happy little surprises. So I'm thinking of using those trees. The other thing, we can cut the branches and instantaneously you get bushes. So we can put bushes somewhere. But before we do that, let's tackle up, because you can clearly see, as small as I try to make these rocks, there's clearly like a break, you know, like a line between the 2 pieces. So we want to make them more blended together. So I'm just carefully opening up my my gravel here. And I may have to stand up for this just to kind of get up over the piece, and hopefully my big old head won't be in your way. So Joe X is here. I used to be Joe S, and now I'm Joe X. It's complicated. How you doing, kid? I'm doing awesome. It's okay. That's if that's as complicated as it's gonna get from S to X, I think we can handle it. I think we're good. All right. So let's gravel this on up. And I think as one of you talked about, I think it was Robert McSween, talked about Mod Podge, and that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use just a paintbrush. She is going nuts. She must be really agreeing with Dave. Like, no, snow, don't you put snow on that at all. So I'm going to take one of my icky brushes that I don't really care about as much to use it with the Mod Podge. And could possibly use for plant life on castle walls. Yes, that's actually a good idea. Like we can tuck a couple plants in here. I have a gap here where I'm putting the brush. See, I have that kind of oops gap. Like we can tuck some vinage and all there. Joe X saying, go all the way with it and get a Bob Ross haircut. Don't tempt me. I actually have a Halloween wig. It's like, you know, a funk afro type of wig. And I'm like, that could very well be converted into a Bob Ross wig. So let's see. This might be a little small, but we're going to work with it. And let's see the gravel we're working with here. So I'm just moving some things out of the way. And so I'm going to move this into view. That's kind of what we're working with here. I tried to find the very fine gravel because I knew some of the rocks I cut are pretty decent size, but they also go down to pretty small. It just gets to a point where a rock can only be so small where you can handle it. Any smaller than that, you just can't get your hands on it. So let's start to gravel this on up. I'm going to put my Mod Podge kind of in a place where I won't dip anything in there by accident. And then Robert and Sween, I would lightly podge. Yes, that's been kind of a theme with me where I've been too heavily doing stuff, especially with the solder during the LEDs. And Dave Beck had some good tips on that. And then once you kind of do a couple and you get into a groove, it's actually pretty fun. So I'm just kind of going through. And usually this time of day, people like to go outside. And I'm thinking that's probably why she's freaking out. Because there's people outside and she's like, humans, you're not allowed to exist. So I don't know if the best way to do this is having it laying down or not. But I know that this is the position you guys can probably see the best. So I'm just going to kind of tap that in there. That's looking pretty good. That's beginning to unify. I'm going to add a little bit more because maybe they can kind of be crumbling and falling over top. So it's not just gravel sprinkled on top of the rock, but they're kind of like falling too. Oh, did you? I was about to like dip the glue in the gravel here. And so I'm just loading up a little more on the sides because they're going to have more grabbing oomph. I just keep wanting to stick my brush in there. I don't know why. Smack those in there, but they're doing kind of a good job of transitioning into the next thing. That's pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more here, up here. And maybe they're kind of going up the castle a little bit. So I'll Mod Podge the castle. Oh, camera wants to focus on the wrong thing. Bit more. I probably should be doing this with the castle upright, but I think we'll get a good effect. All right, and we can build this up in layers. So that layer's done. I'm gonna let that dry before we tip the castle over and let those little rocks fall, the excess rocks. So I think I'm gonna be going, and this I might get my big old head in your way. So pardon me. Keep wanting to, you'll see I'm gonna do it one of these times just because just because. Add some gravel here. And it's nice, the gray is the right color gray. It's so hard to pick this stuff out online because some of the rocks were a little more tan. They had some really nice tan ones. They have this gray one. And I'm trying to think, was the tan going to be too tanny tan? Whereas this one might match a little bit because we did use a lot of grays in this. And I'm just kind of letting the glue kind of go over the edges a little bit. Just so that way the rocks just don't sit on top. It looks like they're transitioning up. She is mad at something, Ripley. There we go. And if I get excess glue somewhere, it doesn't matter because Mod Podge dries. It dries clear. And I need a way to collect this stuff at the end. Because it's spilling all over. It's like, no, not my precious gravel. So that's looking pretty good. And we can even add some gravel up in here. But I'll do that later. I'll wait till we move this thing. So now, let's see, I'm going to push this a little bit forward and maybe add some gravel here. So those of you that were with me when I was carving this portion right here, it just kept bugging me because it looked like a banana. And no matter what I did with it, I just could not de-banana it. So I'm hoping that these pieces of gravel will de-banana this situation right here. So this is the only thing, this mistake, that I could not get it to be a non-mistake or a happy little surprise. So we'll see if Bob Ross will redeem himself this one time now. Stick. And the only thing with Mod Podge, unlike the hot glue gun, is that it does take some time to dry. So you just kind of like gotta build up the layers pretty slowly. But we can build up the layers, move on to flocking, and then move on, you know, to something else, and then come back and finish up our stuff here, our graveling. So before putting Mod Podge on top of this gravel, I'm just gonna kind of squeeze it onto the Mod Podge we have, and that might be enough because this is an awful lot of gravel. And so let's add some to the castle, walls, to kind of make it look like it is crawling up the castle walls, and on top of this rock right here. Just so it looks like it's kind of one with the castle like we saw in the picture. I think that'll look pretty good. And let's see, I'll add some more glue here. And a little bit there. And I'm gonna get all up in your guys' faces as I come up this way. There we go. Before that starts to set too much, I'm gonna gravel it on up. And Gel is here. We're all asking about you. Normally we got our crew here, our usual crew. Okay, so this is looking pretty bad so far, I'm not gonna lie, but it's like way too much gravel. But I'm hoping that when we turn this over, that it'll be good. And I'm gonna try and sweep as much of this onto that plate so that way I can save it for more on this project, but also on future projects. Or maybe doing it on a very large tray is the way people do this flocking stuff. And Robert Masuina is saying it falls in the valley. It does. But unless I put glue in the valleys, it's not going to stay. So once we dump this, we're going to see exactly where it's staying with the glue all set. Is my head in the way? Of course it is. because why not? Let me move this here. It's like your head is not interesting, the back of your head. So please remove it from the shot. There we go. Now I'm gonna come in like sideways like this, just so I can see what the heck it is I'm doing. And I definitely want to build the gravel going up to this like little bridge thing here that I created. So Mod Podge does a really good job of hanging on to it, but you do need to let it dry enough. That's the one thing I learned with Mod Podge, where I'm like, oh, it's dry enough, and then I tip over the project, and no, it's not. Things just seem to fall away. So I'm bringing the glue kind of in the edge, the tops, so it looks like the gravel is overrunning and falling off a bit. So it doesn't look like a cake topper. We don't want stuff looking like a cake topper. I'm going to bring it to about here. And also to help transition where the mountain meets our little road here, I'm going to gravel it on up. There we go. And I'm doing this mostly standing so I can, you know, get over this and see what's going on. So my head might get cut off like a lot, like I'm hunching over, so I can talk to y'all. Right. Rick Francis saying super cool. He's liking this gravel situation. I am too. It's kind of tough to see what it's gonna end up looking like with like the over graveling that I'm doing. But I think it'll look cool. I'm digging it. So I'm gonna hit up this little corner right here, and just anywhere where the cliff meets the road, I'm just gonna add some gravel just to make it look. That's one of the things where I'm like, it's like a straight line going through and doesn't look very natural. So let's naturalize that a little. Add it there. I'm gonna over gravel so I can pack it in like that. And let me see where I can move this. All right, so yeah, I'm kind of working in this area right here. And I'll probably just leave that as is, but I'll start to gravel up in here. Up in here, up in here. And that should be pretty good. It should still fit in our window, which is the most important thing. Toss some gravel on that. Toss some gravel on it. Speaking of rock songs, it's like pour some sugar on me. Except gravel. Gravel this time. It doesn't look very much like sugar unless we start adding snow. All right, so I think we've graveled a lot of things, and I think I wanted to add a little bit of gravel here because see, I got a gap going on here, which I'm not too happy about. So I'm gonna hunch over. Let me see if I can move this gravel plate here and move this guy kind of like that, so I don't have to hunch all up on you guys. And move this out of the way. And then once we flip this over, where the excess gravel is gone, we'll be able to see kind of spots that we missed. I'm sure there's quite a few that I need to tackle. I'm going to go into the grooves a little bit. Kind of let the gravel, because you see I tried to kind of carve gravel here, like really, really fine, tiny rocks. They look good, you know, but they're not like the most super convincing. So this will be kind of a nice way to be like, this is what I meant to do. And if I don't like it, well, this kind of dries clear. So, well, not kind of dries, it dries very, very clear. It's this particular one is a bit, it's a bit shiny, but I don't think it'll be too noticeable. And Jella's saying turn it into a trash bag and catch the excess. That's not a bad idea. think I should be able to find a trash bag close by. After all, this is a garage. I also have a giant oblong plastic or serving plate that I kind of prepared for this. Which I probably should have put it. I'm like over graveling this just to make sure it sticks real well. All right, so I think I'm looking for more spots to gravel up. I think maybe here. Any place where I have kind of a deep crevice. Because you can definitely tell that this piece here, the cliffs, are very, like it's one carved block, you know, versus everything else. So by adding this gravel, the hope at least is that it'll start to look more three-dimensional. Like, oh, she didn't just carve a giant, you know, piece of foam into a rock. So I'm also gonna go up in here. And also I don't want these little rocks only at the top because that looks a little bit weird. So if we just kind of introduce them in different little spots, it helps also break the shape of my hand carved rocks as well. Put that there. I don't know that we need any rocks on the roadway because I'm going to use some flock for that. And this is more just cliff rock stuff. I'm going to leave that there, and I'm overpacking, you know, all of the rocks just to make sure that they really stick. And then here's another deep crevice. Perfect for like little baby rocks. So let's get some in here. And I am kind of filling the crevice a little bit heavily with our Mod Podge. Yeah, so Robert McSween does have a point. When you dump the gravel, the bricks should show through the Mod Podge and the gravel should be stuck well to the high spots. Yep, so that's looking pretty good. We have a couple hints of gravel going on. And I kind of like, let me move this where you guys can see. And perhaps moving myself is best. I kind of like the way we have some gravel, and then the rocks get slightly bigger here to resemble the same rocks that we have over here. So as if part of the bridge has crumbled into our valley here. So while this dries, and before we, you know, perhaps do a round two, if it's even necessary, it may not even be necessary. I'm gonna go ahead and close this zippy bag up so that way I don't spill anything. It's like, no, my precious stones, my precious. So I'm just gonna see if I can kind of move this over here. And this is the plate I was talking about. I'm gonna see if I can kind of shuffle this, at least what's on here, and then we can maybe dump that in a bag, just like Jill had kind of mentioned. So let's see, will I get it on the plate or will I get it on myself? Jill says, rocks and happy spots. Yes, they are. Because that's what Bob Ross said so. And don't tempt me about going all out. I do have that wig. And I was thinking, if we were to do another painting, what if we did a Bob Ross inspired using his same techniques, like dragon painting? Like, heck, I don't know how to do a dragon painting, but I'm sure we'd figure it out somehow. So I captured it, guys. I captured the excess. And I'm going to let this cure a little bit longer because Mod Podge does take just a hair longer. And maybe we can start flocking. So let me see if I can get this into like a cone shape, or at least something that I can pour back in to our, and I'm doing this on top of the model in case, you know, it needs more rocks. But, oh, not bad, guys. Oh, I cannot believe I didn't completely screw that up. Oh my gosh, it did it. I got it all in the bag. All right, so what are we going to do next? What kind of flockage are we going to do next? So we have, what do we have? I'll kind of bring them out, and I'll also back you guys up a little bit so you can kind of see what the heck is going on. So I have this color gravel too. It's kind of like a sandy gravel, and I got this on clearance a long time ago along with the trees before this project was ever even conceived. And the reason for that is sometimes I'll see something on clearance and I'm like, you know what? Let me just get it because I'm pretty sure I can use this in a future project. And I'm just gonna hit the trash can right there. There we go. And so we have this flock, and this flock. So I was thinking, oh, and not just that flock. We also have this kind of viney stuff. So I'll pull some of that out. And this is from the dollar store, this viney stuff, which is so funny because I use it so much where you can not only use it for model terrain, but grass, but you can chop it up too, like finely chop it up and use it for your own type of flock. So this stuff is like really versatile. And I originally got all of this moss stuff for my zombie head drinking fountain. So if you go down YouTube, you might see that. It's basically a zombie head where a beverage of your choice comes out its eyeball. It's kind of gross. We made little maggots out of rice and painted all of the individual little heads of the maggots. But I really like this too. This one right here. I'm gonna put him here and perhaps move myself because you've seen all the flock colors. So we have this, which I think is great for roofs and for, you know, some kind of vinage. Obviously that's a big old clump, but these make really great like mosses growing, but not the flock type of moss because they actually have little branches on them. And so you can make little tufts and kind of put them, you know, like right there or something like that might be kind of neat. So I think Robert McSween is saying, I think old Mr. Ross may have been on some inspirational substances. You know what? Maybe, but they worked just like the Beatles. You know, it worked. Jill says, what the flock? Yeah, what the flock is going on? Carl has joined us and with a cool little graphic there. So I'm just going to start flocking this thing because it kind of sounds like what you guys want. So I'm just going to tilt this a little to get some of the, oh, I should have done this over the bag. See, I get to yapping and I totally forgot. So what I'm going to do is, try and get this plate under it since I've already started the process. Oh. All right, I'm seeing how it's coming out. I'm committing to it. And then we have a vape pen that we converted to a mini fog machine that'll sit right here and it'll spew out fog periodically. All right, so now that we see a better baseline of where our gravel is, and I'll show you guys this in a second, because now I got a hot mess because I did not yet again follow your advice, and specifically Gels, who said tip that in a bag. So I'm just going to be cleaning this here for a bit. But I'm sure this table is going to get full of flock and all kinds of stuff throughout as the night wears on, just like it did our coffee rounds. And I'm not going to lie, man, the shop smelled amazing because we used coffee grounds to create burn marks, and it was like the best thing ever. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And do I have a funnel handy? I do not have a funnel handy. Darn. I'm going to leave a little bit of this gravel here just to kind of throw a little bit more where we need it. But for now, I think we have a good first round of gravel. It's looking a little flat. I might add some flock to kind of make it look more fluffed up. And I don't quite know what that means just yet, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. All right, so let me move this out of the way where I won't step on it, which means I totally will. I need like a bigger workspace, like a giant table that goes like off screen, you know, all these different directions. But let's see. That's going to drop gravel for years. You're so right, because I've done glitter projects, you know, like when you're in school, and it got to the point where the teachers were like, Rachel, you're cut off from the glitter projects because it just keeps dropping junk all over the place. And she's like, I'm tired of vacuuming it. All right, so I'm doing a little close-up. This is kind of how our gravel ended up looking. And I don't know, pretty cool, guys. Like, I like the way some of this gravel goes up and over the rock, so that way it continues. And that's looking pretty good. I think, like, I do want to add a couple layers more and maybe have it, maybe cover this a little bit more and add a couple more rocks up and over. So that way the rocks aren't just concentrated. Like right here, I think I'm missing some rocks I can add. But at this stage, I think we can kind of move on with the flocking, because we can always come back and add more rocks. And after the flocking, we might find that we don't need any more rocks. It might just look cool as is. So let's see here, step with the flocking. So this is my first flocking, and we're gonna see how it ends up looking. But I think I'm digging these two colors, and I'm going to put these colors kind of aside because I'm going to save this brown one right here for our road, because I think this will look pretty cool. And this one's a little too limey green. I might mix it, but you know, I think we can just add these. So where are we going to add this flock? And then, yes, Robert McSween says I can add Mod Podge over the top to prevent it, like seal it from falling. So yes, once we get all the looks that we like, we can kind of do another layer of Mod Podge to kind of seal everything together. But I'm not going to do that just yet, because I want to figure out other spots where I might want to do it. So I'm just fluffing up this flock because it's kind of bunched up. And I think I'm going to start with, and for this, I think I'm going to pour out a little bit of Mod Podge onto my little tray here. The reason being that sticking your brush in and out from rocks are kind of heavy and they don't get in your Mod Podge. But this little flock is going to turn this entire thing green. So let me prevent that by pouring some of this out. And I can also close it, which is nice. Prevent it from starting to set up on us. All right, so same thing. I think I'm going to stick with the Mod Podge, just like a lot of you guys have suggested, especially Robert McSween. So where's my, here's my dedicated Mod Podge brush. You can see some of the bristles are looking a little gnarly, so that's why it's deemed as such. So I think one of the first places I'm going to put our flock is the places that we kind of colored or hit up with green before. So corners of buildings like this, we see green already forming. And here, don't stick that in the flock. You saw me. Guys caught me sitting there almost sticking this stuff in the flock. And I'm going to do a little bit here. Just the areas that I had already painted green. So it kind of serves as a guide, which is, you know, it's kind of nice as to what's happening. We can add a little bit to the bottom of the windowsills, because that's where moss likes to form wherever water kind of gathers and pools. I know, like the bottoms of windowsills usually look kind of grimy, so that's a good place to start. And Robert McSween is saying he likes to use Mod over completed puzzles. Yeah, because then you can frame them, especially if you should I be using tweezers? I have tweezers. Let me see if that makes it a little bit easier for me to put the flock where I want it. That's a nice looking flock. Like some of this stuff, like the trees, I'm not gonna lie, they looked a little cheap. You know, but I figured we can paint them and make them look better. So I'm going to add this flock here. And then Jill is saying maybe put some in that crack in the middle. In the crack in the middle. What crack in the middle? The crack I'm doing? Oh, Robert is saying he'd love it if the castle was raffled off. Like the whole lightning detector? Might not be a bad idea. I mean, you guys did help build it. You know, you really did. And this would have not come along if it weren't for your guys' ideas. Because I think some of you thought that the detector was like hella lame. And the detector itself is not lame, but my implementation was kind of simplistic. And you guys knew more than I did that I had much more in me. Like this. Who would have thunk or thought? I've heard it both ways. So that's kind of looking nice. We got some green moss kind of like coming in and taking over, and it's kind of sitting in the between the castle and the cliff. Between the castle, like in these cracks right here, between the castle and the cliff. I mean, that moss would definitely grow like over top here too, and that would help disguise. Oh yes. So Robert McSween is confirming. He's like, yes. I think also, like, I was trying to get these rocks to kind of come down. I think having some moss kind of coming down from the castle onto the rocks, so you get kind of a merging of the two, you know, like very I Am Borg. They become assimilated. So let me finish putting our flock kind of in these corners. I'm trying to hit up the corners where I naturally already painted green, because they're kind of ripe for the flocking. And hopefully I don't flock this up. That's gonna be our new curse word. Oh, don't flock up. All right. And maybe kind of down here a little bit. I don't want to go overboard, because if you like overflock, then it kind of loses its cool effect. So a couple hints of flock, and then I'm going to use your guys' idea and hit the cracks in here, just like Jell and Robert are saying. And I have found using these tweezers are much better. Maybe I should have done this with the rocks instead of just kind of going gung-ho. And I'm kind of spreading these out as I go. Kind of took a big chunk, and now I'm kind of spreading them out. Then we'll kind of remove the excess later on. But that's good. I got some really great veterans watching and chiming in, which is always good. Clearly you guys have done this before, so it prevents me from making more happy little surprises, which, you know, so far they've been happy, but, you know, that means that the one that's not happy is just around the corner. Something like that. It's kind of like crawling down the castle, and poor Frau Blucher, I you know, promised FB the horses that hers would look a little bit nicer, you know, because she does take care of her stuff, of her castle portion. So let's do now like kind of like what you guys were talking about. You want to like do some of these crevices and the deep cracks. So I think the first one I'm going to do is right here before putting on more rocks. We might find that just flocking is the best. And it looks like Robert is loving my flock jokes. Somebody's got to. They're pretty corny. And I'm not gonna lie, I am definitely rocking the corniness. All right, let's put some of this. And I think that'll tie it up nicely. And this flock seems like it's good quality. Like, and this is speaking from a total beginner that doesn't know what quality flock looks like. But I've seen some that are very plasticky, and so they're shiny. So you put them on and they have a natural, the fibers are just like really shiny. And they just don't look very natural. You can tell it's like flock. But this is a very, very fine moss, so I can see whether this one was a little more expensive, and I don't recall the brand. I probably have the packaging here somewhere if you guys are interested. But that's already looking pretty good against the rocks. I'm liking that. I think I'm going to mix some of this flock and the rocks. I like what we have going on with the castle. I think we can add vines and tufts of things coming out. kind of emerging from all this moss. And with Castle Frankenstein, I'm going to add just a little bit because his is like the most dilapidated. So I'm going to add a little bit just up in here where all these like little pieces are. So Robert McSween is saying we're all corny in one way or another, so I'm in good company. That's good. That's good. Me and my corny team here. See, corny people create cool stuff together. There we go. A little bit. Castle Frankenstein has seen better days, and that was kind of the objective. And I thought we can add some of this, now that I see kind of how this is laying out and how it looks, maybe some of this kind of burnt or like ugliness on the roof of Castle Frankenstein. Oh, I need more glue. I think I'll add just a little bit here underneath these wooden slats holding up parts of Castle Frankenstein. I think this is kind of where moss would form anyways. So we might as well moss it up. And now I can't wait to do another one of these because every one you do, you basically get better and better. Like, can you imagine what our next Bob Ross painting would be? I think it would look pretty cool. I think I'm gonna stop there with Castle Frankenstein so I don't over green him up, but I'll add some moss down here just to kind of transition the rocks a little bit, and it'll be on top of the rocks. And yeah, I think the tweezers were the way to go with this. I think I would have been through half this bag by now if it weren't for the tweezers. And something like this is a little bit tougher to pick up, unlike the rocks. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna leave that as is. And there's a couple more areas that I wanna moss up, kind of hiding behind myself, you know, over here, that we'll get to. But I think I wanna concentrate a little bit more on transitioning some of this stuff. And I am gonna move to perhaps, I don't know, this gravel is kind of calling my name. It might not be the right color though. I'm a little scared, I'm a little chicken, but I'm really liking that guy and mixing some of him so we don't end up with a uniform, you know, type of green. And let's see if I can sit down for this one. And Steve Halsey saying looks good. Yeah, I'm kind of digging this. Yeah, I will have to agree with you. So what did I say? I do want to hit up some moss going down this roadway too, because we have some nice green spots and green opportunities. But I said I was going to sit down, but no, I lie. So I'm basically taking advantage of Gels and Robert's idea of adding moss in these cracks, because there are some sharp points where the gravel just, you know, I didn't make a nice glue transition line. So this is kind of like more me than anything else. So it's nice to kind of feather it out by adding some moss towards the bottoms here. And that'll allow me to kind of create a cool little transition line. Right at the bottom of these. So it's kind of nice. It's like Castle Frankenstein is kind of growing out of the rocks more, which is like the effect that we were trying to go for. And I was not very well succeeding by just sticking Castle Frankenstein on top of these cliffs. So we have some nice moss going on there. And I'm pretty sure this is probably the deepest crevice that I have here. So moss would definitely be growing all up in here. Angela's saying it should be mostly dark to match the picture you had, right? Yep. So that picture was a black and white painting that they used. So it's trying to kind of figure out, okay, what would the colors have been, you know, although it's a black and white. So my first idea when I first started this was to make the castle like everything black and white. But then I thought that would look a little too monochrome standing up against, you know, the lightning. And the lightning bolt was going to be the star, you know, and this was just going to be a little monochrome castle, black and white. Very easy paint job. But the more I thought of it, I'm like, no, we need to add, you know, some colors to really pop against the lightning and make everything look super real. So I'm going to switch to the other one because I'm just super curious to see what that'll look like. So I'm trying to gently close this bag of precious. I love this color. This is ending up being like one of my favorite colors. But I'm super curious about this. And let me find a spot to kind of put it where it would make some sense. And not in case I don't like it. You know, I think it's going to be kind of tough to remove it, you know, if I don't like it. But maybe I can flock a little bit of this roadway. As I do that, I'm putting glue, you know, kind of everywhere. Let's see, where can I, unless I kind of, you know what, guys, why don't I mix some of it in? Or maybe here, this is little grass that has kind of died, you know, because it's way too much on the rocks. It's not getting nutrients and as much water. So maybe right here, this poor flock has pretty much had it. And I kind of layered it kind of heavily. But I do like the kind of the contrast in color that we're getting, so that way the whole thing is not just the same level of green. We do get a little bit of different flockage. If you will, and it kind of transitions into this darker flock here. That's kind of neat. A little gradient effect there. So I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to reserve this for a couple spots here. And let's see if we can find additional, because I definitely like the lighter overlaid on top of the darker, kind of like the gradient effect. And the biggest area I see is like right here. There's a deep crevice here. Now I'm not going to flock the entire thing because it'll look like a smiley face. But maybe I can kind of just bring it inside this crack right here. It's like, I choose you, crack. Just choosing different cracks. Let's see here. Is somebody trying to come in? I hear a four-legged little thing trying to come in. Bust our jam here. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh, the cats would love this flock. And then I would have no flock left. Oh, wrong flock. Wrong color. I was about to jack it up. Here we go. This color. The darker color. And Jell's saying, yeah, it's like highlighting. Yeah. That's kind of, I didn't know that was going to happen. I could totally take credit and be like, that's why I did that, you know. But nope, I'm not going to take that credit. Because the truth is, I just tested it out right here live. And like I said, we tested it right on our production piece, you know, rather than a little test area. So we do have like a little bit more of that coming down, and I like that gradient effect so much that I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna add me some of this other one here and kind of create a little bit of a gradient effect. And good thing I poured out extra glue kind of on the side, and I'm not dipping my brush because yeah, I am like, that glue is all flocked. It's all flocked up. Dum-dum. I'll do Robert McSween's drum rim shot there. I'm going to go a little bit lighter with this yellow flock. Yellow, tan, whatever. I kind of went a little heavy there, but it ended up looking pretty good. I'm going to kind of gradient it in. That's a verb now, to gradient something. This flock is cool. I need to start buying like the big canisters of this flock because I can see how you can go through it, you know, rather quickly. So this is looking pretty good. And then let's see, we got flock. I dig this flock. And then do we have any like of these guys that we want to put anywhere? This might be a better hot glue gun thing, but I'm going to try and do some of these vinings after I got this all over. Let me see if I can move myself. And since we're kind of like here, maybe there's kind of a vine situation going on there. Let's see if I can chop this down a little bit. And if I can gracefully get it in that hole without it looking tacky. Something like that. See if I can, while it's in place, just kind of tack it down a little bit so I don't have to take the whole thing. Oh, I just took the whole thing out. I was like, I don't want to take the whole thing out. Nope, that's exactly what I'm doing. Add like a little bush here. And of course we're adding it right next to FB's because, you know, she's got her act together and her portion of the castle nicely done. So we can add some shrubbery there from Monty Python. We can have some shrubbery. And maybe some shrubbery right here. Where's my, get my brush. Can you guys see that? Oh, you cannot. Let's move me. Shuffle me around. Put a little shrub in here. I think my shrub is upside down. There we go. That's just a small little shrub. It's moss. All right, I'm going to hold that there. And then Joe was saying that's what I was talking about earlier with the crack. Yep. Finally got it. I'm a little slow, but I finally got it. And Joe is saying I did something similar on my son's train setup. Oh, cool. So you guys have like total experience with this stuff. So I have a little bit more of our green type of vininess here going on that we can kind of find places for. This is kind of like a nice little sprig here that we can add somewhere. And I'm getting sprigs all over the place. Maybe like right here, since I didn't really like this kind of hole situation here. Kind of lay you in here with tweezers. I'm glad I brought these tweezers out because I'm like, after carving some of these rocks and struggling with even a medium-sized rock, I'm like, this is going to be very challenging. And let me move myself. That didn't work. There we go. I'm sticking just a tiny bit here. And to make them blend more, we can add, you guessed it, flock! Can flock it up just to kind of get it to blend a little bit. Ooh, I do like kind of these little wisps there that I'm getting. Just some of these broken off pieces look really good. Just kind of lying on the castle. Robert McSween, shrubbery, yes. Joe says, I know a little bit about everything, but not much about anything. So we're in the same boat on that one. All right, so that is looking pretty good. I don't really know what we want to do with this thing other than maybe adding it to the roof a little bit. Maybe some roof dilapidations. Oh, that looks pretty good. I'm going to move myself so you guys can see it. It's kind of tough to see, but it looks like a dead shrub has kind of done its thing and it's just hanging out. And then Merlin. Awesome, Merlin. Thanks for joining us again. We got people with a lot of awesome suggestions, and it looks like you have another one. You can layer a little bit of the sprigs behind the main bunch to add dimension. Yes. Yes, because he was hearing that I was digging some of the sprigs. But yes, we have like a big sprig right here, and we can add like little sprigs. So it doesn't just look like a big sprig coming out of nowhere. So that's a good idea. Just gonna keep I'm gonna use the butt of my brush to kind of jam it up in there. And while I do that, I'm also going to use some of the dead flock. Like that whole area just died up because it's sitting on rock where it's getting no nutrients. See, you guys all convinced yet? Telling all the stories of how these things came about. So I'll add a little bit of deadness. And with the green, we can layer small sprigs over top of the big sprigs. Ooh, that's a little bit much. Got a little overzealous with my tweezer pinch to grab the flock. So some of that flock. Then we can add, I'm just gonna break these up into tiny, tiny little sprigs, kind of like what Merlin said. That dried piece you are adding is perfect. There we go. So this is just really broken up. So I'm wondering if, like, see, that makes like a nice little tuft. Where we can put this tuft, maybe like here, because we have like a very nice looking one, and we're going to match that up with a very dead looking one. Kind of how they juxtapose in Corpse Bride, the Corpse Bride and the Land of the Living. I always really liked the way they did that in that movie. And the Land of the Living, contrary, you know, to what you would think, is the land that's the most colorful. Everybody is vibrant and stuff. And then the Land of the Dead is the vibrant one. And then the Land of the Living is just kind of drab, you know, all very much black and white. So now we got that juxtaposition of live and dead. And let's see here, same thing here. Maybe we can add some dead sprigs. And here's kind of like a nice taller one that we can find a little spot for. I'm just gonna kind of see what we're working with, blow some things out of the way. And let's see if we can add, I probably should have added this one first, you know, but adding it kind of behind that one. I'm going to try and delicately tuck this guy in. And am I in the way? Yes, I am totally in the way. So let me move myself. And I'm kind of like over here. I'm going to try and tuck this guy behind this green. I'm taking Merlin's idea, but backwards kind of. I'm working backwards instead of back to front. Or, yes, back to front. I'm working front to back for right this second. This is tough to see with my big old hands in the way. So now we have some nice, I'm just gonna use some pressure to hold that there. So that makes a lot more sense when we're mixing some of the old and the new. That makes it look a lot more real. And same thing there. So I'm going to attack this road a little bit. I'm going to move it into view and move myself out of your guys' way and figure out what we want to do with this road. And then we'll attack the roofs, you know, and I know my head's kind of cut off. I didn't expect to have to stand and kind of like loom over to see this thing so you guys can see it as well, especially when it's in its zoomed up fashion. So I think what I'm going to do is start with this darker flock here, and I'm going to go along the edges of the road, and then I'm going to use this lighter flock to kind of gradient it, you know, into the road a little bit, if that makes any sense. And then Jill said, what are you going to put on the roof? That's a good question. I think a combination of like this older dead looking stuff and this dead looking stuff, and by mincing it like really finely, maybe we can get some tufts of just moss and, you know, crud coming out of Castle Frankenstein. So I want to really concentrate the grossness on his tower, and, you know, do some grossness on the other side, but mostly I think we can concentrate it there. So I'm not gonna like go lengthwise all the way down, because then that just looks too stripy. I think it'll look too stripy, so I'm just gonna kind of do that and see how that looks first. Just a couple hints of this flock. I have to go out and buy some more, because you know we have to do another miniature. Something cool glows. Maybe this miniature can breathe. We could do like a dragon miniature that actually breathes fire, so we can hook up some kind of butane situation behind it. See, now I start talking and then you guys are like, oh, make it like this, and then it'll be this like humongous build in my driveway where the neighbors are going to be like, what the heck? So, but you know I'll do it. You know I'll do it. And Merlin is saying, add dimension whenever you can. You need no help here. You are telling your story with your piece. Yes, that's, you know, that's what we're trying here. And especially we tell the story with the mistakes, and it's like why this happened. You know, like if you take a look at Castle Frankenstein's roof or his laboratory tower, I messed up on one of the shingles, and they're actually going backwards where water would never ever be able to get out, and that kind of helps sell our story of taking my mistake in that it actually was meant to be there, because that's how Castle Frankenstein got messed up. It took on too much water damage because it trusted the wrong contractor, aka me. Don't ever have me doing some of your roofing. It's not gonna work. All right, so the only other place I'm going to add some, so you can see I concentrated, you know, on that corner. I kind of went alternating corners, so that way it's not flocked all the way, or else it's just like too much flock. And then we'll find ways to add some 3D dimensionality, like Merlin said, so maybe we can add some little baby sprigs along the way. Very, very little baby sprigs. And some more of this flock. I know some of you guys have probably done, like Jill said, train, war terrain too. That's got a lot of detail because there's just all kinds of battlefield types that you can do. So I found some really cool just terrain elements, you know, from grass to shrubbery, you know, actual shrubbery, not like what we're doing, which is cutting things down and then creating our shrubbery, which, you know, works too. So you can't knock that. And so that's kind of nice for the road. And see if we can see what we got going on here in terms of these pieces here, what we can mix together. And I think I'm not going to work backwards the way I accidentally did. And we can add some of the dead stuff first and then cover it up. Robert McSween, he's saying that would be bad. Can you say that A-double-S on live? I'm not sure. But anyways, I agree with you. And we can do some cool... I'm sure you're referring to the dragon is what you're referring to when you say that, because I think that would be awesome too. And let's see. Will I mess this up by doing this? I think if I add a little bit of glue, oh, here we go. We're kind of getting into like, should have left better enough, you know, good enough alone. But you know I always do this. I always keep going. And then heck yeah, it ends up turning out pretty cool a lot of the time. So I'm just gonna sprinkle some of this stuff. Like it's overgrown. And then I can come back once it's dry with a scissor and just kind of shape it a little bit better so it's not so long and unruly. There. And then Robert McSween is saying maybe a few rocks. Yep. Ooh, one has an awesome idea. Is there any glowing or UV paint that will reveal anything like footprints, hoof prints, claw marks during the lightning strikes? I guess if the room is dark, we can use some like glow in the dark paint to put like different like secret markings and stuff on here. That would be pretty cool. I know where you're going. You want some bobcat tracks, don't you? Or like two teeth that come out like a la bobcat style. Let's see if I can get this tuft a little bit nicer than I got the other one. Yeah, that's nicer. Look at my poor brush. It's having a tough time. And Robert McSween is saying the amount of detail is amazing so far. I think so too. Like the flock makes a way bigger difference than I anticipated. I am not gonna lie. I thought it was gonna look cutesy and all that kind of stuff, but the flock really sells it. And we painted a lot of the effects ourselves, but adding the flock on top really, you know, really made it for me. So let's see. There's definite stuff that I still want to do, but I don't know quite what it is yet. So I'm going to move on. One idea I had is as this is hanging, and I'm going to like kind of go into this view, as this is hanging on the wall, one of the things, it's all like falling. One of the things I'm kind of like cognizant of is what can I see that I don't want people to see? Like, you know, how behind. Luckily, this is going to be up against the panel. So the area that I worry about most is like right here. So you can see that I painted a little road that comes out of the main entrance there. And so depending on how high this is hanging, you might be able to see this nasty gap. And I'll see if I can give you guys a better view of it and just let it focus. This gap right here is a little bit weird. So one of the ideas I had was either to add some kind of tuft like this guy in here, so it shows through and it kind of hides things. We can also put a tree, you know, something like that. But I don't want the tree to be so overpowering that then you don't see the eventual horse that we put here. So I'm going to put this back down and back you guys out. And I do have these trees. It doesn't mean that we have to absolutely, you know, use them. We don't. We can just go treeless. But if we were to use them, you can get an idea of their size. Where would we put them? Like, obviously, that's kind of weird. So the only thing that I can think of is kind of like hiding it. And let me move myself. There I go again. Kind of hiding it like here, maybe, you know, and we can even chop off some of this trunk and hide this guy here, you know, or I mean, we can kind of have it coming out. I can chop off the base altogether and glue it like as if it's coming out of the rock or something, like a tree is coming out of the rock. So Robert McSween is saying, I have been here since the start, enjoying the heck out of this. Yeah, me too. This is like looking excitingly well. So I do need your guys' help with the trees, like where the heck to put the trees. And I know it's kind of difficult to describe in words, like put it between where the rock meets the other rock. Yeah, okay, but do your best, and I'll try and figure out what you mean. And then Merlin is saying, I lost power here. I could use a lightning detector. Yes, indeed. We lost one of the reasons why we're streaming late in terms of days. We're streaming a day or two late is because I lost power too. I lost power for a whole day, so it kind of pushed this whole project, you know, late. So those are kind of your choices. The other thing we can do is break off these little branches and use them as actual bushes. You know how I'm struggling to put these like little things here? Well, we can use these and using different color flock to give it more three-dimensionality. And so Jell is saying nix the trees. Robert McSween saying it looks better lower down the tree. So then it's like where to put it without blocking a lot of the cool stuff we've done. I mean, one thing we can do is maybe put it to the side here. That's not a bad spot for it. And then one is saying if it's that high on the castle, the trunk would be bent around the building. A long crooked tree trunk fits the theme. Paint the tree black maybe. Ooh. Yeah, this doesn't. Oh, the base comes off. I was like, oh no, I broke it. Nope, the base comes off. And then Merlin saying the vines would grow over the wall as well onto the road. Ooh, I know. Oh, that's a great idea. Like we can put some vines that come over and then just kind of drape on. Ooh, love that idea. So we're definitely going to do that. I think the tree, if we add one, I think he kind of needs to live over here, up and out of like distracting us from the castle view and also the road, and maybe here if he you know, were to live here. And this Robert McSween is mentioning the scale, tree smaller. That's one of the things that I'm having trouble with the horse. Every horse I find, the scale is just a little too big. Like I need a horse that's a little bit smaller. I know I'll find him, and I started getting into army miniature horses, so I think that's where I'll find the horse. And yes, this tree is a little big. I can cut down the trunk so he sits a little lower, but I'm gonna put him aside for now because it looks like we're thinking about this tree business and we're not like super sold on it. So I'm not gonna force the tree. We can always add a tree later. Remember, this is foam. I can just like, you know, pop the tree in. So I'm not too worried about the tree. So we might as well, I'm just gonna see if I can move myself. I'm gonna sit on my foot so I can get closer. So let's try Merlin's vine idea. So I have this, and this is, you know, what I assume he means by the vines. And if I kind of glue from this side or from here, and I'm gonna bring you guys in closer just to kind of see what atrocity I'm creating here. And you guys can stop me from it. So I can either have it kind of coming from the back here and just have it just naturally drape over like that, or we can have it come from here, from the back here, and have it, ooh, I kind of like that. It's a little long, we'll trim it, but I kind of like that a little bit better. So for that, I think I am going to use the hot glue gun, which I already have fired up because nobody will really be able to see back here, and it'll help secure it pretty well. So I'm gonna move it kind of like this and back you guys up just a little bit. And you guys can see kind of the horrible Jenga that I got going on here. But here's the thing that I'm gonna secure. I'm just gonna tack this in place with a little bit glue. And Joe is saying the vine, he's saying not too thick. Yeah, I'm assuming you mean the hot glue. Yeah, I'm gonna try and go super light on this, just like a tiny little, because hot glue is just not pretty. There we go. Just to kind of really secure it, since it's got to make that bend. And I got some scissors that I can use to kind of cut this really weird long piece, unless I want to fluff it up. I'm going to fluff it up. Oh, it kind of like naturally broke off on its own. And that actually looks kind of neat if I just tangle it and then put it like that. That's looking pretty good. That's a good idea from Merlin, and good idea from you guys with the flock, the mixing of the flock, and then layering everything up. So you guys have had some good ones. All right, so we have some, now I got little wisps. So we have some deadness over here, some dead coming out of here. We also have a mix of alive and dead and mix of alive and dead. I think all that's looking pretty good. Let's see what we want to do with the rooftops of this, if anything. And now Merlin has got me thinking of vines kind of coming down, like if I were to stretch out this piece right here, see how it kind of has natural like sprigs coming off of it? We might be able to do a cool vine. Merlin is saying trees can also be placed behind the castle and just peek out. Big trees would be foreground. That's a good idea too. That is actually pretty good. Now I'm thinking, let me move myself because I am all up in your guys' way. So if we did something kind of like, that looks natural though. Can I hide this under the roof? Like Merlin's got me thinking with these vines. Let me see if I can kind of tuck him in under the roof. And then he can kind of be crossing over and coming down. Like that. And then what we want to do with this roof situation here, because this castle, this tower and this portion right here, along with this little back tower, which I'm totally in the way, this little tower right here, they're going to be illuminated. So we're going to have a cool kind of like flickering effect, and that's going to be cool. And some light is going to just kind of escape through this roof and all of these cracks along the roof. So I figured it might be neat to do a little bit of vining and moss kind of growing right here, because that'll do two things. If you look closely, you can totally see my paper lines and where, you know, I cut the paper. So it'll be nice to kind of disguise that whole situation. So with Merlin's idea, he's saying the trees can be placed in the back. So this is going to sit flat like this. So kind of tucking them in the back is going to be a bit tough. But that doesn't mean, though, that what we can do is say we like this side and cut the little branches off this side, creating a flat profile here, but this profile is 3D, and that in fact would allow us to lay it like flat like that. So we can certainly do that idea, and then just kind of like shove it in so it just peeps out and doesn't look like a big old tree, because we do want this to kind of look more in the distance. So let me move this into view. So I think I'm kind of liking this, you know, so I'm somewhat at a stopping point there. And I just noticed something. Look, guys, I'm going to bring you in. Do you see what I see? Right there. See how we have this decor here and this decor here? He broke off. He broke off. There's no decor. And I think I completely forgot about that. I found him. So let me hot glue gun him before I totally forget. And you know this is going to get knocked to the ground, and then I will never find this piece ever again. I'll be like, guys, where's my little decor piece? There we go. And I did little toothpick spikes on them and painted them silver. So I'm gonna let that guy just kind of set up there. And I'm going to maybe back you guys up so we can check out what we're going to do with this roof situation. All right. Move him into view. So this is kind of the top of the roof. And that whole vine idea didn't work. I'm going to move him aside because I know I can make it work. I just have to glue it on. I kind of like laid it and it caught pretty well, and I thought it was going to stay, but alas. And I'm fighting invisible cobwebs here, our glue gun wisps. So one of the things I thought about doing was to hide the fact that this is clearly paper, especially up here. Maybe adding a little bit of moss and a little bit of chewed up and really finely ground of that dead vines, and maybe even have a vine kind of growing out of this hole. Isn't there a dead tree in the model picture? Why, let us confer. You might be right. You might be right. Let's see what we got going on here. I mean, there's kind of like a sprig coming out of the road. The very top where the bridge meets the road, there's something there. So that could be kind of a tree in the distance. So there you go. That's a good eye. And Gel is confirming that moss does indeed grow on roofs. So I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. So this is going to be awkward for you guys to see. So I think the best way of doing it is kind of this way. And I'll just have to hold with one hand. I don't really have anything to rest it on, unless maybe this Mod Podge. Maybe I can kind of lean back. Although you guys won't even really be able to see what I'm doing. So lean forward. There we go. Now I'm going to start by adding some of our, I'll add some of the dark moss first, and then maybe we'll do a little bit of a gradient thing like we did. And this is looking super, super gnarly, this brush. But that's why I use the gross brushes for this type of thing. So I'm basically going to hit the top edges. And I know you guys don't have the best view for this, but there's no real way to tilt the castle. And I'm just going to go down and hit up just the tops of the papers where I cut. And you can clearly, most obviously see that it's paper. And it's like, this chick just glued some cut up paper to this roof. So I'm trying to lose that effect as much as I can. Let's see if I'm successful here. And I'm just gonna start with that, and then now I'm gonna moss it up. So Jill is saying that, oh yeah, there's a dead tree behind the road when they zoom in on the movie. Is there really? You guys have an awesome memory. I have to rewatch that. They were airing Spaceballs like back to back for a while. So, you know, I was watching every airing. You know, I love that movie with Rick Moranis, obviously Mel Brooks. All right, so that's looking really good. And I'll tilt this over for you guys to see here in a minute. And I'm going to do the same kind of under the roof shingles, as if the moss is kind of growing out from within that crevice. And because this is not laying flat, my poor flock is wanting to fall to the ground. But I'm getting enough. In there. So this is what we kind of have going on. Let's try and tilt this. You know, so the very tops of the shingles have some of the moss, and then I'm going to hit up here just a little bit, and I think that should be good for mossery. Mossing it up. John Candy, yes. Oh my gosh, as Barf. He was awesome in that movie. And even Princess Vespa and Prince Valium. All really awesome characters. I'll watch a Mel Brooks movie any day. Any day. And I remember when this one came out, The Young Frankenstein, and I was like, black and white, you know, but it so much adds to the movie. It really does, the black and white effect. He was his own best friend, indeed. All right, that's very true. Let me see if I can tilt this for you guys. So we have a little bit of moss, you know, rocking the moss. And let's see, I'm going to add a couple here. And this I can do laying down, only because I do have some exposed edges that I kind of want to, some paper edges that I want to hide. And for this, I can probably bring you guys in. So let me do that. All right. And I'm going to add some glue kind of like tucked inside. And I'm going to get this little, ooh, I got glue where I don't want it. I'm going to rub it off with my finger. And let's moss that up. And then I'm going to go back and moss with the, you know, the lighter moss, just to kind of give it some dimension. And then we can see about adding some vinage. Because that's going to look really cool when that smoke comes up from our mini fog machine. It's going to come up the tower and just pop out of here, like just billow out. That's gonna look really good with the vines and the moss and, you know, all that. Men in Tights. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I forgot about that movie. That's a classic. That one I will watch over and over again. I'm sorry, people say it's corny. I love it. So that's looking pretty good if it'll focus here. And so I have the moss kind of going up the sticks, just so it's kind of like crawling up. And I think we can add, we already have a little bit of moss, you know, coming out of here, but some of these little branches that can be coming out. Oh, can I hold this in a way you guys can see? This is so awkward. But some of these branches here, and there we go, it focused. Coming out of the hole and kind of branching down along with, you know, some of the dead stuff as well. So let's see if we can manage that. Let me get this kind of where you guys can see it. And this may be a little awkward, but that looks pretty good there. And probably the best way to do this is to add a little gop of hot glue. And I'm doing this while trying to hold the piece, so just bear with me here a second. And then what I'm gonna do is while it's got its, ooh, ow, ow, hot glue, I'm just gonna tuck it behind, ow, as I use my finger to get the hot glue on here and burn myself, but that's okay. I do it all in the name of awesomeness, so that makes it okay. So here we have kind of a little branch coming out of the roof, looking all like, yep, I made my home here. It's beginning to look very, you know, very much like a jungle. And now I'm going to try and figure out how to add some of this stuff right here. Dave Beck is saying, have fun storming the castle. Oh, we're gonna storm this up, all right. This is gonna be awesome. So I'm trying to get kind of a natural looking like little tuft. That'll come out. And let me back you guys up because it's having trouble focusing. So yes, now that we've mastered this, you know, or mastered it enough, you know, for a first timer, I think we can take on dragons. I don't know what, you know, what you guys have to say, but I'm thinking we can take on some dragons. So I have a couple more green ones that I want to add, but I'll add them in just a little bit. I'm going to put them kind of to the side where I can find them. And here we have this kind of tuft where I think I'm going to do the same and kind of hot glue gun it. Oops. We are now using it as a verb, to hot glue gun it, instead of right there. That's pretty good. So, how am I going to do this? One-handed. I'm going to add a gob right there. Just gob it up. And I'm going to let it sit just a little bit so it cools a little bit so I can use my hands and not burn the heck out of myself. And I'm going to try and stick it in this hole right here where I'm shaking my fingers. I'm going to stick it in this hole and put it behind here. And it's, oh, now that's hot. It wasn't hot, but now it's hot. Oh, can't get my finger out. All right, it's cooled off. It's cooled off enough. So it's only a 2nd degree burn, people. We're good. We're good. All right, now it's glued more to my finger than it is the actual piece. But there we go. Now we have some kind of moss situation kind of growing, like a little mini forest going with this roof. Dave Beck is, I'm not dragging my feet on that idea. Yup. Neither am I. I'm like thinking about it now. I'm just getting the hot glue gun wisps out of the way. But, so we have a couple vines. I'm going to add a couple live ones too. Right here. And then we'll finish it off by adding the other color of foliage or flock. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do that and use my finger to hold it with the hot glue. Which if you let it kind of, you know, settle a little bit, just let it cool right here for a little bit. And you can use your finger to just hold it in place a little bit. Just has to make enough to make contact. Oh no, it's all over myself. All right, so now we have kind of a nice, let me see if I can see that. That's kind of a nice, thing. And then this hole right here and this hole right here will have the smoke coming out of it, so it's going to make its way past this shrubbery and vines going on. So I think that looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to add some of the other flock color to it, which, let's see the best way to do that so you guys can also see, what's going on. So I'm going to try and hold him up like this. Let's see, maybe this is awkward, but I'll hold him like this. And let's see, where am I going to dab some of the other foliage? I'm going to be real sparing, with it. Just a few drops here and there, and then maybe he's kind of growing over here. So, tweezers. My table's a mess. Although I didn't mind it so much when we were doing the coffee grounds because that smelled really good and it kept me pepped up the entire time, the entire stream. I was like, oh, I'm awake. So that was good. All right. I think that looks darn well believable. Merlin had some good ideas about just kind of layering this stuff on. Just like that. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to give that a break for now. Sometimes I like to give a project a break and come back to it the next day, and you come back with like a whole bunch of more ideas. So let me take a look at this. And I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Oh, and I hit the mic. So if some of you guys got some ear pops, I apologize for that. And so this is kind of like what we have going on. I really like the way that the gravel is now helping us unify. So I had unite and unify trying to come out of my mouth at the same time. So this gravel helps really unify the block carving that I did here with the cliffs with kind of this block right here. And so I did individually glue a lot of the bigger rocks, and I thought that I shaved a whole bunch of them and I sprinkled it on and I was going to glue it, and I'm like, that's just going to look horrible. It looked all haphazard. So I just glued on some bigger ones, then glued on some of the smaller ones. And one of the things you're going to notice is I got a lot of these rocks that I glued from carving into a lot of this piece to expose more of the castle and then build back up to it using some of these smaller pieces, which was definitely the way to go. It looks so much better that way. And so I like what we have going on with some of the gravel. I might add a couple more gravel spots and a couple more mossy type spots, because what I want to do is the gravel right now looks pretty flat, like flat up against the thing, and I want it to look more fluffy. So one of the things I might do is add another layer, build up certain areas of gravel to kind of make it look, make it look more fluffy, is not really the word, but different mounds, because right now wherever it sits, it's very flat because we only added one layer of rocks. So I'm going to pick a couple areas where I'm going to add a little bit more layers of rocks. And then Robert McSween is saying, don't forget to seal the gravel, which is a really good idea, because this gravel, just like Jel said, it is just going to keep leaking like glitter projects. It's just going to constantly be on the floor, and I'm going to be vacuuming all the time. And I got better things to do than vacuum like these cool projects. So once I get all my mounds the way I want, I'll definitely seal the entire area with my Mod Podge, so that way the gravel is sealed in. It's not going anywhere. I may add a couple more flock areas, although I think the castle is looking pretty good. I don't want to overflock it and the whole thing just turns very, very green. So I'm probably going to leave the castle as is. I like these roofs up here the way they are, because it really draws attention to Frankenstein's tower, which is dilapidated. And so using some of those vines and stuff there, I think looks pretty good. A couple of you are adding to my dictionary. We just kind of invent words. as we go, because sometimes, this is too cool. We can't use regular existing words from the dictionary. We got to make something up to describe this. So a lot of thanks to you guys for helping me get it this far. So I think I'm at the point where I'm going to let this sit. I'm really going to think about this tree and Merlin's idea of putting it in the background, comboed with the idea of maybe shaving off a couple of these branches so we have a flat side of the tree, and then we have a 3D side of the tree, and we can add flock to finish it off. So maybe he can sit back there, or just like in the film, he can kind of sit right where you guys can't see it, but kind of in the back there. And I think if I debulked this a little bit better, I think it would sit very well. So it kind of matches the movie. And then I still have plenty of room here for my wicked horse, for Miss FB, that we all love. So I think, I'm just gazing upon the coolness. And thank you guys for joining me this week. I know the stream schedule was a little bit off, but I had a ton of fun flocking. I think that we're like 99% there with this. So I'm going to take another look at it tomorrow morning. And then for next week's stream, I believe that is the last stream of this entire thing. So what I'm going to be doing is putting this against the backing panel and getting it plumbed and wired. And I'm going to hang it on the wall. And I'm going to put a camera there, and then we are going to try out all kinds of lighting schemes together and finally choose one that we like. And so we're going to see what the different effects look like. Perhaps we can trigger a lightning bolt. It's very difficult to do, but last time we were actually able to do it. So I'm going to see if I can get the machine to perhaps we can fool it into lightning. So Brian is saying, great job. Enjoyed it as usual, from Robert McSween. Jell is saying, good night and great job. And thank you guys for joining. And special thanks to our Wrench Army members who make all this possible, and of course to all of you for joining, chiming in your opinions and your suggestions, because people see this and then more people join. They're like, well, what's this chick doing? It makes it more fun. So I'll catch you guys next time, and have a great rest of the week.